Are we doing anything different in terms of trying to help improve communication with our WMATA Rail Operations Control Center and OUC?
Yes, sir, we are. So I'm a bit embarrassed to say I've been here 4 years and I had never met the chief of WMATA Police, and he and I, after some of these incidents, were on the phone on a Sunday night for about 30 minutes, and we will be meeting in person tomorrow with our fire chief. But so what we found with WMATA is, and I'll have Teddy talk a little bit about that too, and we actually found that it was actually a problem across the region with other 911 centers. WMATA had outdated telephone numbers to dial into 911, and so what was happening is the number that they had, we have it at a lower queue than 911. And so when they were dialing 911, most of these instances, they call us a lot. They call us about a dozen times a day, just different things. People, losing their breath, or, it's not always, something a priority one. But they had an old number for us. And so what the problem you heard and what most people probably saw was WMATA would call and they would be on hold for a very long time. And we usually don't have people on hold on 911 unless there's this spike in calls. And so we started looking at the data to try and find out why was WMATA on hold this long. It was a couple of minutes here, 3 or 4 minutes there. And we found out that they were using an old number that we have as a lower priority. And so that has been since corrected. And then me, being a part of COG, the vice chair of the 911 directors, I see that our public safety chair sent out an email a couple of weeks ago kind of asking all the 911 centers, what number do you have for WMATA so they can update the system? So they're doing that. And then there's other procedures that we're going to talk about, just how we're responding to certain calls that come from WMATA, how those conversations happen. But I think that was it. What WMATA? It was a phone system thing of why they were being put on hold.
So WMATA simply, not just for our call center, but for other call centers, had, we'll just call it an outdated phone number. So they thought they were doing the right thing,
right? But
they had not updated their numbers to be able to reach at the level of urgency that we felt like they needed.
Yeah.
Because for the lower acuity calls, like you're talking about, since it sounds like what you're saying is that you do get phone calls from them. Mm-hmm. It's just that the lower acuity ones, it's a reasonable amount of time until they get through, or is it the same number? Like if there's a shortness of breath versus high acuity,
right?
It's the same number they're calling?
Yeah, no, it's the same. They're literally calling 911. We just had the system set up that when they call 911, it goes to a certain number because WMATA obviously hits different jurisdictions. And so depending on where they are in the trail system, when they call 911, if they're trying to get DC, it's a certain way. Am I saying that right? It's a certain number we have to hit the DC 911 center. And then if they need Prince George, it's a Prince George number. But it doesn't matter the type of call it is. We found that they were being put on hold sometimes for lower acuity calls or higher acuity calls. The ones that you saw that was kind of put out, it just happened to be they called at a peak time, and so they were put in the hold queue. Usually when they call 911, they go straight through because we don't have a lot of calls coming through, and so they're kind of going through, and it only, this problem actually only came up because of the times they would call that's during a peak time where we, rush hour, and so everyone's calling 911, and so it just was noticeable that they were being put on hold.
Okay. All right, well, I appreciate it. So the changes have been made for our call center. Mm-hmm. Regionally, they've made the changes as well?
Yeah. We were the, I don't want to use whistleblower, but I guess we were the first case where they noticed, hey, well, let's check the rest of the jurisdiction. And so just because I'm privy to the COG emails, mm-hmm. I saw a message come through and say, hey, we're checking numbers for WMATA switchboard. Can you give us new numbers? And I saw some going back, no, this is the number to use for Fairfax.
Okay. How do we make sure for the future, mm-hmm. It sounds like you're having a relationship now with the chief of Metro Police, and within WMATA, how do we ensure that you, as well as other call centers, have a direct, obviously we can't make them do it, but mm-hmm. how do we make sure we've got the type of accountability and connection so that we don't find ourselves in this situation down the road?
I think keeping those meetings going. I think in just having a relationship, he's literally locked into my cell phone right now, and we've talked through other little things since then. I think keeping that conversation going. I actually think from the email with COG that it'll be probably brought to my committee where I'm vice chair, and so I can make sure I have that conversation. And then the other piece is we actually do have another line of communications with WMATA, which is over the radio. They do have access to for certain situations, they can go over the fire and EMS radio and communicate it with us that way.
Okay.